Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. Today on deck, we have Pablo Gonzalez with a Z, and we recently met through Jacksonville Wealth Builders, who is the organization that Renee and I have our rental properties in, and they do some really great stuff, and Pablo is a very big part of that, and we just hit it off. So you're going to be seeing Pablo in other things with us, but he is such an amazing character. He has such great passion, great energy, and I couldn't help but introduce you to the fabulous Pablo Gonzalez. So welcome, Pablo. Yay!
Thank you. Amazing introduction. Jen, I'm somebody that appreciates a stage, and for you to share your stage with me is truly something that I feel very special for it, and I really appreciate it, and I hope that my presence here is of very much of value to your audience and to you, and that I add something to our friend's life that's watching or listening right now.
Oh yeah. And this whole thing was started with COVID, with all of us in shelter in place in the earlier part of the pandemic. It was this desire to connect with people more than just a phone call. Some of these folks that I've interviewed on this show, I had no idea. We didn't get to know each other until this interview. Now we're all friends. So it's just a way for us to connect and share information. You're right. If we provide value, all the better, right? Because it
Yeah.
does help people know that they're not alone and that we all have gifts and we're all meant to share those gifts with the world. So let's talk about you. What makes Pablo Gonzalez special and unique?
Jen, everything you're saying and everything you're starting with is like 10 different rabbit holes I want to go down. First of
No,
all,
I do
yeah,
that intentionally. You know this.
that's cool. First of all, I love content creation as an excuse for relationship building. It's such an underutilized tool, right? Like even with Greg, the stuff that we're doing, our first go around, right? When we first launched that program, we had a full day of interviews. We interviewed 8 people back to back to back. We were like live producing the show and then redistributing it. And after about like 3 hours, he's like, man, I've known these people for so long and I've never had this level of conversation with someone, right? So that's one, put a button on it. I don't want to go too crazy there. 2, I live my life by the saying by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, in my walks, every man I meet is in some way my superior, and in that I can learn from them.
Ooh.
Right. I strongly believe in what you're doing in your first question. What makes you unique? What makes you special? I am a fanatical believer in the fact that every single person has something inside of them that's unique, something that they've thought about longer and more differently than anyone else, something that they've worked on harder than anybody else that I know. And I very, very much am obsessed with the idea that every person has that value to offer. And if I can figure out what that value is and communicate it to that person and help that person communicate it to other people, that is how you make the world a better place. And I really think it ties into my answer, right? Like I think what makes me unique and what makes me special is, I tell people my superpower is that I fall in love with everyone I meet, right? Like I am genuinely fascinated by something inside of every single person that I meet, save for like 1 or 2 people out of 10 bajillion that I talk to all the time, right? Like I very much, I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking to fall in love with the person who I am speaking to. And I really think that makes me unique. I really think that makes me special. And you pair that with the fact that I'm a pretty good communicator, right? So it makes me kind of a world-class hype man, I guess you could call it, right? And I'm going to stick with that. I think that's what makes me unique. I really do believe I care more about the other person in front of me more than anyone else in the world. I really do.
Wow. And that is the magic of being a successful podcaster, successful videographer who is interviewing folks daily. So let's walk through your day. So let's talk about what it is that you do.
Sure.
And what is your typical day? Because are you talking to people like every single hour on the hour, or are you limiting yourself? So hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder, but I'm just so fascinated. Like, how many people do you really talk to?
As many as possible. Right. Listen, my biggest limiting factor to how many people I talk to is how comfortable this chair is, to be perfectly honest right now. Right. Like if you catch me walking into a conference, you'd think that I'm a bookworm walking into the Library of Congress, like I really am always seeking that touch point. So I would say on average, I probably talk to like 4 or 5 people a day right now during this COVID times, and my calendar's generally out like 2 to 3 weeks, something like that, and I'm always looking for it, right? Like I really, I don't know if this is going to tie into other questions that I'm stealing a thunder from the next questions, but
It's all free flow.
I am my formative memory, right? Like that, how everybody has that trauma memory, right? Like trauma doesn't have to mean trauma, right? But like that thing that's imprinted in your brain is walking into preschool in Miami. I'm the youngest person in my family, right? Like my brothers and sisters all went to schooling in Venezuela in a bilingual school. So when we moved to Miami, they knew English and I didn't. And I remember, them saying secrets about me in English, even though I'm like 3 years old, right? I still remember this stuff. And me not understanding and walking into that preschool knowing that I'm the only kid that doesn't speak English. And I have this out of body memory of just like walking in, clutching to my backpack, holding my lunchbox, and like looking to the left and looking to the right in sheer terror of how am I going to belong here.
Whoa.
And that marked me. And then we moved so at that age, you're a sponge, right? There was one other kid, Jose Garrido, who became my BFF, right? Still in contact with him to this day, right? Like I love that guy like a brother. And he was my in. And at that age, you're a sponge. You learn English real quick. Like by Christmas play, I was already like dressed as a leopard speaking on stage, right? But a year later, my father's job moved us to Spain. And we moved to Spain and we enroll in a British school. And the first day I'm walking in there feeling pretty good about myself, knowing Spanish and English. And I get there and I don't understand the Spanish dialect and I don't understand the British dialect.
No.
So it happened again, right? So I've just been obsessed with it, man. I've been obsessed with how can I never get that feeling again? And how do I avoid people having that feeling?
Wow. I never even thought about that. You're right. The Spanish dialect is completely different. I wouldn't assume that the British would be, but then you're right. All the slang, all the things, a rubber in Britain is not the same as a rubber in the United States. Various things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have always strived to communicate because of these turning points in your life. Wow.
Correct.
Now, when you were in Spain, did you fit in pretty easily because you found another BFF who kind of guided you through it?
I've always fit in easily from there on out, right? Like and I don't remember the Spanish one. I don't remember equally as traumatizing because I was walking in like, I got this, I just remember going home crying the first day.
Oh, poor baby. How old were you?
4, right?
Oh, gosh. You just mastered English and then, oh boy.
Yeah. I thought I had it. I thought I had it pretty well figured out. Now that sent me on a very rapid rate of being able to connect with people to the point where, so I love telling this story. So picture this. So my dad was an executive in Spain. We got moved there. He got this like sweet expat package where we would fly home first class to Miami and to Venezuela a couple times a year. And in one of those flights, I ended up sitting by myself, right? So the first class seats are 1-on-1, right? And we're 5 people. So somebody had to sit by themselves. I sit by myself. I talk up this old dude next to me and I end up getting him to buy me, like he bought me something from the In-Flight magazine because I was just like, oh, I've always wanted this my whole life and this and that. And the guy, and then he gets up and talks to my parents like, what is up with this kid? Like I've never, so from there on out for the rest of my childhood, I would always choose to sit by myself. I would always try to befriend an older person and get them to buy me a Toblerone or an M&M's or whatever. So imagine 1986. There is no in-flight entertainment. There is no iPad, right? Like you're walking onto an 8-hour flight. You're a grown person and you see a 6-year-old little schmuck sitting there looking up at you like, hey, like just like looking up at you, excited, wagging his tail, ready to talk to you. You got to be thinking this is going to be the worst flight of my life. Yet every single one of those flights, I'd walk away with an older person complimenting my parents, right? So it's just me at my core.
That is an epic story.
Thank you.
Watch out for all you older people. If you're befriended by a very gregarious 6-year-old, you're on the hook for some gifties. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh yeah, you were born to be in sales and
I guess.
marketing and
I,
communication.
yeah. Yeah. Listen, I would say I just found marketing late in life, right? I used to fancy myself a salesperson, but what I've realized is that I'm a world-class opener and a very mediocre closer because all I care about is the friendship, right? Like I I don't have the gumption to just be like, hey man, so you're gonna sign that contract? You gonna sign it? You gonna hey buddy, I haven't talked to you in 2 days. Like because I know that's in Spanish it's pesado. Like it just comes across crass or heavy or uncouth, right? Like I'm obsessed with that feeling of like a good impression and a good connection, and it takes a lot for me to sacrifice that.
Wow. See, that's a really fabulous way to describe your gifts. Um, we have so many similarities. I also found marketing after being in sales for a long time. I was that kid running the bake sale table for my parents' hobbies, to help fundraise, or I'd be the one selling tickets to whatever it was that my parents were doing. And I'd have, tickets all stuffed in my pocket. It's either my best days were either on rainy days or cold days, because everyone felt sorry for me that I was out there, fundraising, right? And I'd
Yeah,
be like, I have 2 tickets left. And then they'd buy them, and I still had tickets in my pocket. And I'd be like, I have 2 tickets left.
so
I
good.
was like 6 or 7.
Yeah,
So,
totally, man.
so isn't it funny? And then you're right, like sales. Oh, I have a friend, Larry Mendoza. Larry, I hope you're watching because this is your story. Larry was going from engineering to marketing and sales. And he was realizing that the difference between marketing and sales is ball chasing. When you're in sales, you go chase after balls. Go get that one. Go get that one. Go get that one. And in marketing, the balls roll to you.
Bring me the balls.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's where I'm at. I prefer having the balls roll to me.
I mean, anybody that doesn't agree with that, I think you're weird.
Or they're just so new to it, they're
Yeah,
still eager and happy to chase after balls, like a
correct.
puppy versus an older dog. Puppies are like,
Correct.
yay, let's go chase after
Correct.
balls. And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
roll to me, honey.
and I'm not trying to put it down, right? But I find that some of the best salespeople are a little bit socially awkward, right? Like they don't care about that gene of like being liked that much, right? Like I look for that in a salesperson, right? Like, and they do very, very well. And those people tend to do well around me because I handle that social awkwardness piece for them very, very well. And then they eat, you know.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Yeah.
that's really cool. Oh my gosh, you really are a master of studying people. That's fun.
I don't know if I'm master, but I'm definitely obsessed with it. Right? Like in a very, very weird way. I've always read psychology books. I've always read, my major was economics, and I didn't really think much about that except for the idea that it all came very normal to it was very easy for me to understand economics because my mind works very well with math. And then the rest is just kind of like human behavior tendency stuff that's very normal for me to assume. And I didn't really learn anything in college, right? Like if I tell you I went to 3 classes in college, I'm probably exaggerating a bit. But I then found myself reading like behavioral economics when behavioral economics hit, right? When Freakonomics,
Yes, I
that type
love
of
that
stuff,
book.
like that.
Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics.
Yeah,
Great books.
Freakonomics, Super Freakonomics, Robert Cialdini's work of like
Oh,
influence and
yes.
persuasion.
Yes.
Man, I love that stuff. And that was when I was a green building expert. It had nothing to do with my career. My whole career was groomed to be an executive and an operator. And I would walk in as a manager and leave as a salesperson everywhere I went. And it wasn't until the last 3 years where I've just really been like, no, what I am is a marketer. And I still don't really self-identify as a marketer. I still self-identify myself as a relationship builder that's been able to reverse engineer everything that I've learned by studying people and whatever. And in that same thing of like, I look at someone and I find them fascinating. I then go, oh, that piece of it, I want that in my repertoire, right? Kind of like I don't know, like LeBron James will look at Hakeem Olajuwon and say, all right, I need to learn how to develop a low post game. I don't know if you're a sports fan. That's a deep sports metaphor,
I
but
get it. I
yeah,
get
but
it.
it's like that, right? Or like a bodybuilder's like, well, I got to develop my trapezius maximus muscle or whatever, right? Like I think about that in personalities, and I strive to improve it in order to increase my connection to the people that I find myself in front of anytime I'm in front of them.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. And I get it too. When you interview somebody for a living, and I interview my clients so we can write SEO content for their websites and do
Yeah,
social media marketing for them and write blogs for them, I really am obsessed about getting their voice and getting it right. Because if I'm going to be the writing arm and my team, we're going to write for these people. We really want to get their voices in their heads. So we have this whole process where we sit down for like a 2-hour long interview with the owner of the business. We hit the record button and we're just typing feverishly, trying to capture everything that they're saying about who they are and who they serve and their why. All these, in fact, what I ask in my SEO interviews with my clients is identical to pretty much what I ask here in Connecting
makes
with
sense.
Jennifer Filzen. It's just that instead of on a business, we're going to write your story context, it's more of a, hey, let's just connect, because these are such great open-ended questions. What makes you special and unique? Who do you serve? What is your why? And what advice do you have? And I agree with you completely, Pablo. When I sit down with these business owners, I always learn something amazing. And I'm like, ooh, I should add that to my business model. And I firmly believe that because I've interviewed these champions in the industries that I serve, I am also becoming a champion, because, influence, right? It rubs off. And when you
Dude,
learn from others and when you're an open vessel and you come in with an I don't know mind, but I want to
yes.
learn mind, it is beautiful, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
If you approach with wonder and you approach with curiosity, then everything is wonderful, right? Like then you can find beauty in anything. You can find good in anything. That I think that's what leads to optimism, right? Like because you're approaching it with, what can I learn from this? What is there, what is there for me to glean from the scenario? I couldn't agree more.
oh, that's so cool. So here's the next question then. Please tell us what it is that you do,
Mhm.
and then from that extract, who is it that you serve in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I describe what I do in a couple of different ways, right? Like if you want my moniker, I consider myself an audience cultivation strategist, right? Whether it's like, how do I cultivate the audience that I have one-on-one with you right now, or how do I cultivate an audience that you have in front of a stage as an MC or a hype man or a speaker, or a Facebook group, or a Zoom call, right? You've seen it. So I consider myself an audience cultivation strategist, right? That's where I stop from calling myself a marketer, and that's really what I do. I am just trying to figure out the best way to serve an audience so that everybody gets the biggest win-win out of all of it. How that manifests is I design and execute content creation programs for business owners that allow them to create new relationships with potential clients and partners, nurture existing relationships and get better business performance results from their existing partners and clients, and create a community around their business without the business owner, or without the decision maker needing to spend more than 2 to 3 hours a week doing it, as opposed to, like looking at your phone for 20 hours and thinking, what am I going to say? Or a screen and thinking, what am I going to write? I make it so that all they got to do is show up.
So you give them the topics?
I give them the the structure and design, and the audience gives us the topics. Like
Wow,
it's not about you when you're trying to serve people, it's about who you're trying to serve,
very
right?
good.
So what you see that we do with JWB, it's a very purposefully designed interaction point, where the way that I see things is a Venn diagram where you have valuable information, relationship enablement, and content. And where you can layer those things and drive, repurposed content and drive people to that interaction point nonstop, that becomes this like gravitational ball of goodwill and value that you're creating win-wins about everybody, right? Like when I interviewed you for our show, I was very honest in saying, this is about you. Like I want to make marketing material about you, because that to me is the way that it works, right? Like if I'm making you look as good as, and it's selfish, right? Like there is a selfish element to it, but if I'm making you look as good as possible with me on stage and making the audience believe that you have a ton of value and a lot to learn, then I am guilty by association just by being on that stage with you. And you get the benefit of being put on that pedestal, and the audience gets the benefit of understanding that great value that you have to offer to the world. And I don't see a downside in that.
Dang. Oh gosh, your business is going to be huge, buddy.
I think so. I agree.
You were called, okay, what is it? You called it an audience engagement specialist?
Audience cultivation strategist.
Audience, I have to write that down. Write this down, folks. Audience.
Yeah, you can see it on my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, audience cultivation. That is so unique. Strategist. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's
uniqueness
brilliant.
Is big, right? Like I'm a big fan of uniqueness. Like I think different is a lot more compelling than better always.
Steve Jobs, think different. Apple.
Correct. And play, like I would recommend the book if you're into that concept. There's a book called Play Bigger by these guys out of Palo Alto that studied since, the last 10 years of companies that approached from a category king strategy, like standpoint, like try to become a category king, and who succeeded and who didn't. And they basically wrote the book on category design and category king creation. And it's unbelievable. Like it's the best thing I've read in 10 years. Just how they break out how you do that, how you market the problem instead of the solution, right? Because whoever can articulate the problem best is known to have the solution, right? Like people assume that they have the solution, right? Like people don't do business and follow and connect with people that they understand. They do business, follow, and connect with people that they feel understand them. So if I can state what you're feeling in a way that you're like, that's what I'm feeling, then you assume, then I know how you're feeling and I know how to help. And that's like the key in that book. The marketing concept of it is like you just become like the bat signal of this one problem that you are passionate about.
Ooh. So you help people define what their superpower is so they can address that. So for example, if I may, and help me clean this up if you think it's sloppy. So one of the things that we ask our clients when we're interviewing them about their auto repair shop is, what is your superpower? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll say to me, oh, I love solving the most challenging of problems, or there is nothing I can't fix, bring it. Yeah. Or we believe in providing the most wonderful auto repair service experience without any stress. We like to make it easy. There's like so many different ways, because so often when people say, oh, what is special and unique about your auto repair shop? We're honest, we're reliable, we're affordable, and we do it right the first time. Well, everyone says that. Yeah. So what is it that you do? And then it's also very fascinating, on a side note, to find out what their kryptonite is as well. Mm-hmm. So we can figure out what to shy away from. But you're right, though, when they talk about their superpower, they are instantly dialing into the problems that they solve.
The problem, correct. What they're really saying is all the other, like what they're really saying is that when you go to another auto repair shop, you feel like you're being lied to, and that's wrong. Right? Like that's what brings out, they're like, we're honest, man. We do not, like, I do not tell you need new brakes unless you need new brakes. Right? Like, that resonates with me. That's how I picked my auto repair guy. Right? Like, it was like, dude, I am never going to tell you something that I wouldn't do to my own car. I'm like, all right, good. Thank you. That's what I need. Cause when I go to Honda, they're just like, yeah, you need the triple service. And I'm like, I just had that 2 weeks ago.
Right?
And I don't know, I'm not technically, out of, I don't even know how to say it. I'm not
It's
mechanically
okay.
inclined,
It's and they've become so savvy, so high tech
Yeah.
that the average person cannot do it. Even a typical do-it-yourselfer who understands it, if they don't have the diagnostic tools and software,
Mhm.
sorry,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
don't feel bad.
Yeah.
It does not reflect on who you are. You are talented at what you do, so let the
Yeah.
professionals do what they do.
Oh,
That's
thank
so
you.
cool.
Thank you.
So how did you go from being an executive who focused on what did you say, operations, and then went to sales, and you kept
Yeah.
doing this over and over, and then you decided to spread your own wings and fly? Take us
Mm.
through that journey and how you decided to do what you do now as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
audience cultivation strategist. Gosh, that's the most brilliant title I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you. So I graduated college. World was under construction, 2003. I'm not a handy guy, anything like that, but I got this job as an executive in training for a Fortune 500 company that was rolling up a bunch of subcontractors and approaching a bigger market. That moved me out to California, and I became a green building expert out there as I was like 25 years old, running a 120 person operation and a $15 million budget. I became a green building expert out there. 2009. That was like my first I may like construction because I've always been passionate about sustainability. And in construction specifically, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I moved back to Miami in 2009,
We can go
and
back to that later because that was pretty cool. But anyway.
we can have that. I can talk green building and the fact that green building is best practices construction all day long, right? Like I'll say it real quickly. Green building essentially means that you are building something with as little waste as possible, that's going to last as long as possible, be as cheap to operate as possible, and be as healthy indoors with the best quality as possible. It's what everybody wants. It's about reverse engineering that into your budget, right? So I fall in love with that, right? And in 2009, I have the opportunity to start my own shop, my own company in Southern California. Or my old man called me up and he's like, "Hey man, you can be one out of 200 dudes in SoCal, or you can move back to Miami and be the guy." And I just played golf with this guy, Bill Hawley, who is developing the first LEED high rise in Miami, LEED being the green building certification du jour, in Miami. And he needs your help. So I was like, I'm on a plane, come back to Miami, start this green building consulting company, partner with this guy, Bill Hawley. 2 years later, I get absorbed by my biggest client, right? Like, so they buy me out and bring me in house as director of sustainability for now a hospital builder, university builder. I went from doing single family homes like Pulte, Lennar, that type of stuff to hospitals and
Dang.
universities and commercial construction, real quick, just out of a vacuum of, you know, in, I don't know, exposure. It's a mix of all of it, right? Passion, exposure, willingness to be entrepreneurial. And at the same time, when I come back to Miami, I get an email from my best friend saying that Habitat for Humanity wants to start a young professionals group, and that the demographic in Miami from 24 to 40 gives less to charity than anywhere else in the world. Like it's like embarrassing, and they want to activate that demographic. So I raised my hand. I'm like, man, this might be good business development for me, right? Like I'm gonna habitats and construction, whatever. Didn't really turn out that way, but that set me on like a completely life-changing path on the side as a hobby. I create this young professionals group. I become the president of it the next year. I'm on the board of Habitat the year after that. I get into a leadership Miami program after that. I'm on like two other boards of charities a year after that. I win a top 20 under 40 young professionals for Brickle magazine a couple years after that. On track. I get tapped to be the next chair of the young professional group for the Economic Development Agency of Miami, right? So like I
Oh my
I
God.
I know 1 to 3 people in every single room in Miami. Like I know the president of FIU and the superintendent of schools, whatever, stuff like that, right?
Bravo.
As that's happening in my company, when they first absorb me and buy out all my contracts and give me a nice little 6-figure salary as director of sustainability, cool title that I made up, by the way. Uh, that was another differentiator, right? Like when I call myself director of sustainability, nobody was director of sustainability at the green building conferences. 4 years later, there was a handful of them, right? Like
No way. You
yeah,
inspired them to take your title.
correct. So, and it was director of sustainability. Like, so 2 years into that, about a year and a half into that, First year and a half, I'm super pumped. I got health insurance. Like I got a little money in my pocket, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and, um, and I basically just solved all their needs, right? Like they hired me because it was more expensive to hire a consultant to do each project individually than to just give a dude health insurance and whatever and pay out their contracts and this and that, right?
Smart.
So, yeah. So I'm like a year and a half, 2 years into it. I'm working like 15 hours a week, making six figures, and I'm not passionate about construction. I am passionate about this community stuff I'm doing, and I make the conscious decision to lean into that piece, right? I think, you know what? Despite what everybody says of I should spend more time in the office, I rather diversify my influence, right? Like I rather not just try to impress two people up a chain of command. I rather go out and impress the people on the board of directors of the Economic Agency of Miami, all of them, right? So I lean into that, and that world of nonprofits turns me into a very skilled networker, a very skilled public speaker, right? So like I'm all these things, and supremely connected, right? At one point, the CEO of my company gets invited to speak on a panel for smart cities at the Economic Development Agency of Miami. Doesn't want to go last minute. They're like, Pablo, you go. So so I show up and I share the stage with a couple guys that I shouldn't be on stage with, right? Like it was like the head of Latin America for Cisco Systems and the head of like the Smart Cities Initiative for like the World Bank.
Whoa.
And yeah. And I've been on a bunch of stages at this point, right? But like that's the first time I come off stage and there's like a line 6 people deep waiting to talk to me. And it hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, oh, all these people think I'm more important than I am because I'm on a stage and they're in an audience and I'm next to these people that I'm guilty by association by. And my first thing that I think of isn't how can I get on more stages? It's how can I provide stages for other people to
Ooh.
and that is something that in a podcast interview came out where somebody pointed out that was special. I didn't realize that till very recently. And so I reach out to this developer for this project that I've been tracking that was building a high rise in a high income, low density residential area in Miami, but it was on top of the metro rail. So it's called transit-oriented development. It incentivizes public transportation. And I think that that's really important. And anybody that's been to Miami knows that it needs public transportation. So I reached out to this developer. I'm like, listen, man, I know that Coral Gables is giving you a hard time about this thing. I got a couple, at this point I had built up 4 different young professional groups for 4 different charities. And I'm like, I got this audience of young professionals. I think it's important they should know about it. I want to have an event, put you on stage with a politician on the board of one of my charities who's into sustainability and through projects like yours. What do you think? What do you think he said? Yes, right? So dude shows up, small event, like 25 people. I get the venue for free, like nothing, it was literally across the street from where I lived. And I have this event. And a week later, they're like, so you guys interested in this $60 million project or? And I back-ended a very competitive bidding process and got us in the door by providing value as opposed to trying to like say I have the best price or whatever, right?
Oh
So
my gosh. That's
yeah, so that
amazing.
yeah, and that changed my perception of the company. I became a business developer in the company, and then I just didn't shut up about the fact that I think business development should be done like this, right? Like if you can provide enough value and have a stage and this and that, and I didn't shut up about that for like 2 years. And then when Hurricane Irma was bearing down on Miami, I came up to Jacksonville because I didn't want to live through another Category 5 hurricane like
And
I
it
did with
hit
Hurricane Andrew.
Jacksonville. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you probably were invested in Jacksonville at that point, right? Oh no, you have
Oh
family in
yeah.
Bunnell, right? Yeah,
Oh
yeah, yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So I end up spending 5 days holed up at a friend's house with his friend who had a man crush on me since a bachelor party that we went to a couple years ago.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
he and he started selling on Amazon during the early days of Facebook ads, grew an audience,
Mm.
and then developed a software for Amazon sellers and then sold it to his audience, and super, super innovative. But his audience, like he had been continually trying to pivot this software to go more B2B and be more, this is like Amazon drop shipping. It's kind of like the bottom of the barrel of online entrepreneurship as far as like needing no money and it's all just arbitrage. And he's like, man, I'm like telling him everything I believe in. And he's like, I need a biz dev guy like you. I'm trying to do this thing. And I'm like, this is how I would do it. And he's like, I love it. How can I get you to quit your job? I'm like, I'm already there. Right. So he's having an event in December. I offer him to keynote the event and MC it. Right. So like during that time, we work out a deal where he gives me ownership in the company and 10 grand a month for a year. And I quit my job in January, move up to Jacksonville. And I realized immediately that not immediately, I realized real quick that I jumped onto a burning ship. Right. So
Oh no.
Yeah. So this software that he was pivoting, I'm giving you the whole story because I find it's gratifying for me to tell you this whole story so that you see how this thing that I'm doing for JWB came true because you've experienced it.
Bring it.
All right, cool. So I get here a week after I quit my job, head developer quits because the software hasn't really been working for 3 months. This like software that he's pivoting that is going to be what I'm going to be selling isn't really working.
And you don't want your reputation on the line and your integrity on the line for something that's not working.
Sure. Yeah. So he also gets a couple of ripoff reports because his biggest affiliate, who is the person who was this like sweet little old lady that was his biggest success case, and though she was like the face of her marketing, right? It would be like if Greg right now would send me to hell and I would start just like saying all the skeletons in his closet, like if Greg had skeletons, but like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, and by the way, this guy had a history of doing that, right? Like his issue was impulse control, right? So he had sent a bunch of people to hell, had made a bunch of enemies, and it was all coming home to roost. Ooh. And then 2 months later, one of those enemies paired up with this lady and created a one-to-one competition software that he had never had before. And in my first 3 months as VP of business development, we went from 500 recurring revenue subscribers to 300. Not a good look for your boy. Right? So my whole business plan, I had created this 0 to 30 days, 30 to 90, 90 to 180, 180 plus business plan revolving around creating events for people similar to what I had done in Miami, because I knew that online sellers needed community, right? Like I knew that when I was the only green building expert in town in Miami and I had to do anything that I hadn't already done before, I was going freaking bananas, not knowing, the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt. So I knew that there was value in that. And I knew that bringing them together in specific geographic places would be really, really valuable for us as a brand builder. And we had the money to do it, right? But now we don't. So as this churn is happening, he had also created a mastermind. And at this event that he had in December, he had sold like 6 or 7 people into this like mastermind. I didn't know what that concept was at all, right? Like I was like, well, people pay you to be your friend. I was in a fraternity in college, but it was different, right?
That's a funny way to put it, but you're right. That's hilarious.
I think it's weird.
Maybe you're your friend.
And that was kind of going down that crapper as well. So I'm like, all right, listen, man, we're going to clean house in this mastermind. And what we're going to do, I also realized that 12 of our highest level customers at that point were making up about 30% of our recurring revenue. And if we lost one of those, we'd really be up the creek, right? So I kind of reformatted the mastermind, took it over myself. We started hosting these Zoom calls every 2 weeks where we'd show up, give a little bit of value, right? Like, this is what we're seeing in the Amazon ecosystem. This is what I learned at a conference I went to. I just read Never Split the Difference about negotiating. We're going to do a little exercise I just invented. Right? And then we just have a therapy session, right? Like, hey, Jen, what are you struggling with? Oh, man, my VAs keep quitting on me. I don't know how to keep them. Oh, Emmanuel, dude, you're really good at your VAs. What do you got to offer? Oh, well, I do this, right? And recording all of this stuff. Within 2 months, they're like best friends, right? Like I'll never forget, there's this like Serbian guy who was very like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this, right? Like Eastern Bloc, regal, and at some point he's just like, I just want to say that you are my best friends. Like I have never had this, like I'm always top of food chain, and now I get to be at the mountain with other people. And I'm like, holy, like I can't believe this is happening, right? So next step, we take them all down to Panama. We have it in person where I give everybody like a template for a presentation to present their business. I do a SWOT analysis for everybody. They all present their business. I take them salsa dancing. I take them touring the Panama Canal. At that presentation, to my partner's credit, he realizes, man, everybody here is doing something really good in their store. Each person's doing one thing really good in their store. He implements it in his store. The store starts killing it. I then create this course called The Business of E-commerce, based around learnings of the tribe that I sell for $5,000 a pop to like 20 people. First big fundraise, right? Then that goes so well that we now do the Live with the Tribe event in Jacksonville in February. And we reach out to now the tribe and say, all right, you're awesome at Excel, right? Like we're going to put you on stage and position you as an expert. Now my whole plan is coming to fruition. It just took much longer. And so we ended up creating $200,000 worth of cash flow revenue off of this cool club at the top of the customer ecosystem with these products. And on top of that, we had all these recorded calls, right? So now Facebook advertising is, you sell on Amazon, or like, do you have this problem in your store? I can't keep my VAs employed. At Ecom, we're not just we're not a software, we're a community. Take our free trial, join our Facebook group, and meet Loretta. And then Loretta's like, oh my God, thank you so much for that tip. My business is saved, right? So like, and then they opt in and they see that this lady is not just an actress, but she is in a secret cool club at the top of the customer ecosystem. And I can meet her in Jacksonville in 4 months and I can ask her the question and see if it's true for myself, right? So we solve the customer journey like very seamlessly. We create all this content out of it and save the business, right? Unfortunately, my relationship with him became very toxic, right? Like his impulse control ended up being me taking bullets all the time, and it was spilling over into my personal life. So at the end of the year, I decided to just walk away from the equity, walk away from the business. I felt that I was already out far enough on a limb that I was like, all right, I'm just going to jump, build a parachute on the way down, right? And so moving to Jacksonville was the first time ever taking this job, right? I was between doing this and taking over as head of business development for another builder that would have been, 130 grand a year, whatever, right? Like right in line. And my dad's like, you're fucking crazy. Right. And I'm like, Dad, this isn't about my career. It's not about money, man. Like I need to see I need to see what I'm made of. He's like, well, if it's an emotional decision and this is what it is. Okay, kooky guy. Like first time I've ever, my dad's my idol, right? Like first time
I love your dad. I can't wait to meet your dad someday.
My dad's the best. And my dad has built multiple $100 million business. So like he's coming from a place of knowledge.
Yes, for sure.
And he still thinks I'm crazy. So I'm already out on this limb. I snap it off. And beginning of 2019, my wife gives me the best advice I have ever gotten, which is, you know what? Because I'm a connector, right? Like the moment that I left that job, I had 1 million offers or 1 million opportunities, right? And she's like, why don't you take 90 days to detox, get some, figure out, take a purposeful pause here. And I'm like, all right, that sounds good. Sounds like a good vacation. But if I'm gonna be purposefully not taking action, I wanted to put myself in a position where I was doing something I felt good doing. So I booked 4 conferences, and they were all like digital marketing, online business kind of related conferences. First one being Gary Vee's conference, who has been my North Star since when I was
Gary
sitting here.
Vaynerchuk, holy crap. I
love
love that man.
He's the best.
He comes from such a great heart. He has such a servant leader's heart. Yeah.
So listen, October 2017, when I'm sitting there contemplating join this e-commerce company or listen to my dad, at a green building conference, I'm trying to like build a relationship with this developer. And I'm like, you listen to podcasts? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what do you listen to? And he's like, this guy, Gary Vee. That's the first time that it opened up. And when I first turned him on, hated him, right? Like I was like, the Jets, gross. But as I listened to him, I realized that he was doing what I was preaching in Miami as from a community level, right? Like give out more value than you have to give, and it comes back to you, and executing at a high level. He became my first archetype that I could really relate to as a successful businessman. So he's been my true north the whole time. So the first event I went to was Gary Vee's event in Miami. And I get there and it's a 1.5-day conference. And I realized that after a day and a half, I'm walking away with like 18 friends and everybody else is talking to the same 3 people they showed up with. And I'm like, I think there's something here, right? Before I left Miami, I gathered all my groups and I kind of threw myself a goodbye party as an egomaniac that I am. But it was done in service to backfill my position on the boards that I was on, right? So I invited all my audiences. I let my charities speak about what I do for them so that somebody could volunteer and step up. And I gave my TED talk about why everybody should network, why, like how I do it, like stuff like that, right? So I'm like, maybe that talk has some space here, right? Like I want to be a speaker about networking. And so I show up to the next conference and I'm like, all right, I'm a speaker about networking and I'm going to follow up with everybody I meet here and do like little interviews about the conference and who they met, because conferences are about the people, and everybody that I talk to loves it, except the conference organizer does not give a crap about what I'm saying. So I'm like, okay, so that's my customer. So I don't think I have that right yet. So I show up to the next conference, which is the 10X conference in Miami. And
Grant Cardone,
Grant Cardone, who
another person I love and follow.
I don't really vibe with Grant Cardone, but his conference is a absolute exercise in the value of a stage, right? Like
Yes.
he was just like,
Yes.
that conference was like a Metallica arena concert and a Mexican flea market had a baby, right? like it's like entertain. Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Entertain. Do you want some of this?
Oh, wow.
So
I went up to one of his events up in Oakland, and you're right. It was just a mass of people. It was so beautifully orchestrated as an event. Oh,
yeah,
so sexy. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
full production. Yeah.
Yeah, the production was amazing. And I am a stage design guy, right? Like when I go to Broadway shows, I'm like the stage. And when I go to concerts, I'm like the stage, right? So I was super impressed. And there was somebody there that talked about how you monetize the stage being the speaking fee being 1 out of 10 things. And this whole ecosystem around being on a stage. I'm like, bro, that just solved, So then the next place I went to was Russell Brunson's event, Funnel Hacking Live.
I don't know him, but I
Oh,
guess I'll start.
so ClickFunnels?
Okay, well, I've heard of ClickFunnels, and I've
Okay.
certainly done enough stuff, but I just don't know the people behind it. So
Yeah.
that's the person behind ClickFunnels?
Yes, who is a certified bona fide genius, maybe an alien that came down to Earth to usurp human intelligence right out of our brains and put it on a pedestal. Like the guy's incredible. Another guy, again, I don't vibe as much with the sell people, but I don't underestimate the tactics and what I can learn from everybody, right? So like I can learn a lot from Grant Cardone, even though his voice is not my voice, right? Russell, same way. That event is like the mecca of people that are making money online through info products and masterminds and Facebook groups and making money out of nothing. Right. And the event itself is just like a 5-day just religious indoctrination into the ClickFunnels. It's the most amazingly produced live event I've ever been a part of.
Wow.
And there I show up introducing myself as a professional networker, right? So then again, differentiation point. Everyone's like, oh, professional networker. Oh, I want to know you. Who do you know? So, right. So long story short, I go to these and I figure out, I find out all the infopreneurship kind of like business models. So I finish these like 3 months. Then I come back with this idea of like, bro, if you just unleash me on conferences, any company, whatever you're trying to do, and all I'm doing is making content around all of it, this can be a marketing strategy for any company. I get recruited by this cannabis company that's trying to create a cannabis product that is for people that don't use cannabis, right? Like an AM inhaler and a PM inhaler to rival Tylenol PM and Tylenol AM, right? Like,
Yeah.
So I'm like, so they bring me in and I'm like, how would I do it for you? I would go to every cannabis conference and find the best stories of the people whose lives have been changed because of it, the doctors that attend these things, the scientists, the activists. I found the cannabis industry in the same exact spot as I found the green building industry when I got into it. It had just gone from Birkenstocks to suits, and people were trying to figure out how to tell the story. Right?
Brilliant.
Yeah. So they're like, sweet. They fly me out to San Diego. I go full ham on that conference. It's like the Emerald conference is like the quintessential like medical conference about it. Come back with all these connections, and a week later, one of their products puts like 10 people in the ER for like 3 days. So that gets pulled out from under me.
Oh.
but what I come away from these conferences is an Excel sheet of 450 people that I legitimately connected to, that all are happy to take my call, that all know something that I don't, right? Like, this is now my audience and my network in 90 days. And 450 reps at, this is what I think I'm going to do. No, this is what I think I'm going to do. No, this is what I think I'm going to do. Right? Let the audience tell you what they want. And as I realized that, I'm like, okay, cool. So I come up with this mission of, I want to prove to the world that community creation is the future of business development. And the way I do it is basically replicate this model we did at the e-commerce company. And by July, I get my first client, which is one of the world's foremost digital content strategists. This guy, Brendan Kane,
Oh,
who,
I know who that is.
yeah, so he's my first client, and
Wow.
I do this program for him. So I now get to hang out, like I'm hanging out with Greg Cohen. I get to spend that much time with him talking about the foremost digital content strategies for, for 4 months. He ends up going a different business model route because he wanted to liquidate his funnel on the front end as opposed to the back end, right? Like, but that gives me the gumption to then, at the same time, I meet Greg for the first time at their charity volleyball tournament. And he's like starting to make content. I'm like, oh man, I can help you. He's like, yeah. I just want to figure this out. I'm like, cool, whatever. But I stay friends with him, right? Like I try to organize more volleyball games. I volunteer at Habitat for Humanity because Alex Safakis is on the board of Habitat, right? Like I come in with value. And 4 months later at their golf tournament, one of Whitney Ritchie, who you may have heard of, she was like one of the episodes on the Not Your Average Investor show. She's your insurance provider for your right, who is one of my best friends. She invites me to be the hype man at her tent at the JWB golf tournament, just somebody to hang out and make everybody make sure that we're having a good time here. And there I'm talking to Greg, and Greg's like, I'm like, how's the content thing going, man? He's like, oh, dude, I spent like 20 hours a week just like thinking about what I can say, and I'm following people around on my phone, trying to put them on screen, and they hate it. And I'm like, I can help you, man.
And
And I'm like,
for those of you guys that are watching and gals that are watching, so Greg and Alex are the founders of Jacksonville Wealth Builders. They're young, they're hip, they're amazing, they're wonderful human beings. I've
amazing
always
human
liked
beings.
these guys. These guys
Yeah.
are just so great. I remembered when they were in a little house operating their business out of this little house, and they kept adding rooms and adding partitions to this little house. And now they're like, gosh, they're just breaking so many records, and they're like are they a Fortune 500 company now? Like
No, but they've been on the Inc. list, the Inc. 500 list, like 9 years in a row. They're like 120 million bucks in revenue. They control like $450 million in assets. They've been on the front page of the Wall Street Journal twice.
yeah,
Right? They
yeah,
win best place to work in Jacksonville the last 6 years in a row.
they're great guys, and their whole
Incredible,
team is
incredible.
amazing. And I'm just, aren't you glad you met them and that you get to work with them? They're
It
just
has
great guys.
profoundly made me a better human being. And I say it from the bottom of my heart, right? Like there is nobody that I've spent more time with apart from my wife in 2020 than Greg Cohen. And the time that I have spent, I mean it, right? Like I run with him twice a week in the mornings. Like I have a marketing meeting, plus I go live with him twice a week. It has made me a much, much better human being just out of osmosis, right? So at that point, I'm like, all right, what I was doing for Brendan just wanted like to increase his lifetime value. But I'm like, well, this could actually work really, really well for a company that has already a high lifetime value of clientele. And I sit down with Greg and I'm just like, I walk him through everything that I just told you. I've gotten better at explaining it and more concise, but I'm like, if we can create this interaction point where you don't have to be the source of the content, but what we are is highlighting the people around you in these pillars that build credibility, teach your audience what they want to know, make everybody around you look good, give everybody marketing materials so that you become the stage. And he was like, dude, nobody has ever broken it down to me like that. Like,
You are a genius in breaking that down, because I've known this stuff conceptually, but I've never spelled it out as succinctly as you have. It's like,
I think,
well,
yeah,
dang, of
yeah,
course.
Yeah, I think it took some outside eyes, man. Like it took somebody that's never been a marketer that learned this by creating young professional groups for charities and then trying to sell construction projects. Like it took a very fresh set of eyes. But now I'm like, nobody offers this, right? Everybody's like, yeah, I'll be your content agency as long as you tell me the content. In the social media world, right? Like
Yeah,
not in
no, no,
SEO.
I
What you're
get
what
it.
you're doing, like that's different, right? Like writing for people and stuff like that.
Well,
And what you're doing is brilliant, right? Like to me that's huge. But how do I show up 4 times a day, Gary Vee style, in people's Facebook and LinkedIn feeds without having to just constantly be thinking about what am I going to say to people and without being cheesy and without always asking for stuff. That's, to me, that's it.
that is so good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what I love about what you do in the question of who do you serve,
Mhm.
you are the epitome of a ripple effect. You
So I'm trying to,
are, you are, of course, serving those that hire you,
Mhm.
but then you're serving those that you interview for that hire. You're serving, it just boom, boom. Like everything that you do has this beautiful cascade of energy to everybody that it touches. Good
Thank you.
job.
I
Dang.
was really scared of how to answer that question, Jen, because when you ask who you serve, my answer is everybody. I am, to bring it back full circle, from when I was a kid and I figured out that being friends with adults got me candy. Right? Right? That taught me, man, if I can be entertaining and engaging and whatever, I can get what I want. At a certain point in my early 30s, I found myself only connecting to guys that like sports and like talking about women. Right.
Well,
And I'm like,
it's easy to fall into our peer groups,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
And
I'm
I'm
with you.
like, that's not who I am. Like, how do I connect with other people? And I realized that the best way to connect with people is to serve them.
Mm.
So my goal is to be friends with everybody. And therefore my goal is to serve.
Mm.
You know, I just came up recently with a saying that is, find the way to serve the people that hold the keys to the doors you want to open. That's it.
That's kind of similar to Zig Ziglar's concept. Remember him, Zig Ziglar?
I resonate with it. I don't know him intimately, but anytime anybody brings up a Zig Ziglar thing, I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
amazing.
What
Love
is
that guy.
it? You make the world a better place by helping other people.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's if you want to figure out how to get anything you want,
Help
help
other
as many
people.
people. Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
more,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
You'll get
it's
what you
such a
want by
great.
helping. If you help enough people, you'll get what you want. Something like that.
There
If you
you
help enough people
go.
get what they want, you will get what you want.
Yeah, I was just listening. You can go on to YouTube and hear him speak in the "See You at the Top."
Hmm.
And I was just listening to it this past week because, would you believe, I grew up on Zig Ziglar tapes. My
That's amazing.
parents went from age. Let's see, how old was I? I think it was from age 6 to age uh, 10 or 12 or something like that, for a good chunk of time. I think from 6 to 12. My parents belonged to Amway,
Yeah,
and they listened to Zig Ziglar tapes all the time. And so I grew up listening to this stuff. No wonder why I'm in sales and marketing. I was
yeah,
trained as a child.
yeah.
And they always said, visualize what it is that you want and you will get there. So you know what I would do as a kid? I would draw up these architectural plans for the playhouse I wanted my parents to build for me.
Awesome, awesome.
So I've got to talk to Marta, your beautiful wife, because here's the thing. I kid you not, I have an architectural design in my head that I've had since age 10 of the house I want to build. Maybe she'll be the one that finally helps me bring this thing to fruition.
She could draw it up for you on Procore and make it happen, man, for sure. Yeah,
That would be so cool.
she would love to do that, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, we'd have so much fun. I
Yeah,
mean, I totally envision it. So my parents never quite built me the playhouse, but that's okay. They built me lots of other things. So someday I'll have the adult
awesome.
playhouse.
Awesome. You want to hear something cool? If you go on Spotify, there's some Zig Ziglar stuff on Spotify. Like it's like musically produced and stuff like that. Like they put like beats on it and stuff like that. It's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, I have to check that out. That's
Mhm.
really cool. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Oh my gosh. So now you are so fun to talk to. I could see this going into like a 3-hour conversation if we
Yeah.
wanted it to.
I'm so present
Oh my
right
god.
now, right?
And
Like this is my favorite thing.
it is. It's mine too. Oh my gosh. Okay,
Yeah.
so we all have a why, right?
Mhm.
We all have a why. We all get out of bed every day
Yeah.
because of some drive. There's some pull from the soul. Now, our why can change as we're
Yeah.
kids. When you're little, it was probably to get that Toblerone or whatever little
Mhm.
thing from the person next to you, right? At the age you are now, Pablo, which is what, 30,
39. I turned 40 in
39.
November. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Hitting 40 this year. Woot, woot. And I'm turning 50 this month. So
Awesome.
I'm so excited. I love
Very cool.
some people are like, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want people to know how old I am. No, I'm proud. I'm glad that I have a little bit of gray to show my wisdom. But we all have our why. So you are 39, going on 40. You're happily married. You're doing what you love. What is your why at this stage of the game?
My why used to be to prove to the world that I deserve the family that I was brought up in. And I realized that that sounds really great, but within that, there's a little bit of like not worthiness that really was holding me back, right? Like, my why, it's kind of complex, right? Like I really, I don't know which one is my why and which one is just kind of like my mission, right? But like,
And that's okay. There are no wrong answers here. So walk
yeah,
through it. It's all good.
cool, cool. I'll start with the end. I really believe that. So when I was doing the green building thing, I'm really concerned with what we're doing to the planet, and I'm very, I was deep in it, and I thought for a while maybe if I could affect behavior change and through the green building industry that maybe we could save it. I think we're beyond that. Personally, like if technology doesn't save us, adios. But there is a chance that technology saves us, right? Because we don't know what we don't know is going to get invented. Maybe somebody invents that robot vacuum cleaner from Spaceballs that sucks out all the carbon from the oxygen, right? From the atmosphere. And by the way, they're working on that. Um, I do think that we're inevitably going to densify, right? Like our population growth is growing, our death rate is lowering. There's only so much land. Sea level rise is going to compound that. And we've learned throughout history that when you put a lot of people together in one place, bad things happen often enough, unless they're wonderful cities like New York City or whatever, right? Like, so I really, 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 really am on a mission to prove like that community business development. That's like my first step. My end goal is to prove that to prove to people that the other is an asset, not a threat.
Mm.
Because if we're gonna be living on top of each other, we need to value each other. The why, and so when I tell you that I tried to prove to the world that I deserve the family I grew up in, I am not kidding when I say that up until I'm like 33 years old, I never had an issue that I didn't create for myself, right? Like I grew up in a very supportive, uh, abundant, loving environment, very close to everybody in my family. Youngest of three. My brother, when I'm like 32 or 33, gets pancreatic cancer. He fights it for 2 years and passes.
Oh,
At
that must have been
his
devastating.
pretty, I don't know if I would describe it as devastating. Definitely life altering. But at his funeral, 1,200 people showed up.
Mhm.
And that outpouring of support and the events that have happened after, of the relationships that have come into my life as a result of that, and the lessons that I have learned, are the reason why I value community so much, right? Like that was everything. That it really was just an eye-opening feeling of, man, had we not invested so much into the Catholic Church, which is something that I've had my druthers with for a long time, and if we didn't have that community to support us, right, to support his wife who was a teacher at the parish school, and to support the kids and my mom and dad, and you know, if we didn't have that, we would not be okay, and we are after a catastrophic loss.
Oh, yeah. And I agree with you. Being a fellow Catholic,
Yeah.
there are some issues that I have with the church, but I still am close friends with all the kids that I went to CYO with. You know?
Yeah, listen, I think organized religion has been selling community for a long time. They've known this business model, and it's clearly successful.
Very.
Right?
Very.
So all that being said, everybody that showed up to support my brother, everybody that reached out to me to a T, would tell me that my brother is this guy that brightened up a room, brought people together, you know, always made you feel special. And I never gave him credit for that. As a younger kid who also had that skill set, who was put on a pedestal for that skill set and not him. And I also grew up wanting to not be my brother.
I get it.
You know, my brother was really my North Star in the sense that, like, I'd be like, oh, he messed that up, I'm not doing that. Oh, he messed that up, I'm not doing that. And I had enough.
Brothers are for.
Yeah, I'm like 8.5 years younger than him, so I had enough perspective to do that. But I also didn't have the wherewithal to be like, that is what I do want, and that is what I do want. And the older I get, the more I realize I am him. Like I want to be remembered like that. I really do. I want 1,200 people to show up to my funeral. I don't know if it might be a little bit of competition, right? Like I've always kind of competed with them, but like I want to be remembered as that. Like I want to have that effect on people, and that is my why.
That is beautiful. And thank you for showing your vulnerability in that. You know what? That is a true tribute, right? I lost my dad St. Patrick's Day this year. He battled dementia, and I miss him. And you're right. We don't always get to say, we think we've said everything, and then you have some time, you're like, I didn't get to say that.
Yeah.
So what do you do? But oh my gosh, it's so beautiful what you've done and what you're doing and your purpose, and you're amazing. So what advice do you have? Oh my gosh, okay. I almost want to like take it down, like, okay. Here we go. There are a lot of people who are pivoting in the time of COVID because they have to, right? Restaurants have to completely pivot their business model. Online businesses have to completely pivot. Auto repair, real estate agents, I don't care what it is. Everybody pivot or die, right?
Yep.
You have mastered pivoting events online, because it doesn't matter if it's in person or if it's like this. You are amazing at it. So what advice do you have for people who are the former event directors, or so much of their business relies upon live events?
Yeah.
And they're struggling taking it online.
Listen, I think for that, it's a very easy tactical piece of advice that I have to give them. That is, don't think of your event as a one-time thing, right? Like we could very easily think of the Not Your Average Investor show as a twice-a-week show, but we think of it as 24/7 repurposed content, right? So like if you're pivoting, if you are, And I've had this conversation with those types of people that are like, man, I used to have networking events. I was like, guess what? Now you can network 24/7. Right? JWB has become their own chamber of commerce, right? We have panel events and we have, and a group where people network and whatever, right? So like, don't think of the idea that you've been unshackled by geography and you've been unshackled by space and time thanks to content. And that allows you to make a much greater impact for an event director, right? Like, don't forget that your event is something that you are now, instead of spending a bunch of money on a videographer and an AV team, now the money you spent is on guys like me, is on people that repurpose content, right? Like, repurpose your content, like look for the gem, give it away for free after the fact so that then people want to go to that event. And don't make your promotional material about your event. Make it about the people that were at your event. Like, make it about the intelligent questions that people asked and got answered, right? Make it about your audience. And you have very much the power to do that right now, that you're doing this in a way that you are now seamlessly recording absolutely every interaction that's happening in your event. Take that extra time to find that gold, repurpose it, and give people and promote the people that go to your event. Be the stage. Don't try to be the star of the stage, right? On tying it back to my why and what I'm doing as far as pivoting goes. If my gift, if my superpower has been seeing the special thing inside of everybody my whole life and falling in love with everybody, and I didn't see it in my older brother, right? Like, I didn't, best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding, right? Like, I didn't see it in my older brother. What are you missing in someone? What have you not seen that is that little piece that will solve exactly what you're trying to do and what you're about, and will be that final puzzle piece that completes the beautiful Rembrandt you've been working on, right? Like, look long and hard at the people and the things that you have judged the most, because you're going to find the key to your happiness, to your success, to unlocking that next thing that you're working on in that deepest, darkest pot that you had already made up your mind about, that you have completely dismissed. And you should always approach the deepest, darkest part of it with wonder and with curiosity. Would be my biggest piece of advice.
Dang, man, you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Do we have to end this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I want to keep
It's
going.
8:30.
I know. You got to go get some dinner.
Oh, the Miami Heat are playing in a playoff game. I'm just, I'm really overwhelmed right now.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. How can people get a hold of you? How can they do business with you? Because honey, we have to share you around the world. You are, I hope you are able to scale and
that's what I'm working on,
yourself.
right? I literally just took on
buddy.
a partner. Yeah, I literally just took on a partner. This Israeli guy that like has scaled a big company before. I've always wanted to be a partner with an Israeli businessman, like, and that's what we're doing. We're scaling, right? Like, we're spending a lot of time figuring out how to scale this thing, right? And I think it's possible because Gary Vee did it, right? Like, I'm just following the one-to-one model. I'm giving everything I can away for free, so that you feel everything that I believe, so that then I can offer it as a service to $100 million companies. But for the average person, you can have it,
Yes.
So, it's funny. It's funny when you're like, we can talk for 20 minutes or we can talk for an hour and a half. Like, you were being like real facetious about it, and we did it. I know. Not to judge.
I know.
I didn't think it was going to happen either. To find me, Connect with Pablo. ConnectWithPablo.com. My business is called Connect with Pablo. Probably going to rebrand soon. Thinking about
I love that. I really love ConnectWithPablo.com. Seriously.
Well, that's just going to be my personal brand, right? Like, ConnectWithPablo.com. My email address is youShould@ConnectWithPablo.com, right? Like, it's a call to action and an email address. My Instagram is at Connect with Pablo. Find me on LinkedIn. It's really hard to find Pablo Gonzalez. It's like a rabbit in a hat. But connect through us or whatever. And my baby, like, find me on the Not Your Average Investor show, right? Like look up JWB and the Not Your Average Investor show. That would really serve me, like that would be great. And then my baby is my podcast, the Chief Executive Connector podcast. That is a living document of this, right? It's a living document of me networking through life. I introduce you to the people that I've become friends with. We talk about how, like how to connect, how we've connected with each other. I show in real time how I've learned from them and what I think makes them special and how you pull that type of stuff out. And we talk a lot about like growth through mentorship, right? Like it's whether it's by friendship or by content, which I think is the new form of like mentorship at scale, which ties in neatly to my business conveniently. But yeah, the Chief Executive Connector podcast is my baby. And if you really want to help me, then invest in JWB because it'll help you too. It's a fantastic product, right? Like,
oh yeah. We already have 2 rental properties with JWB. We have hard money lending going on with JWB. I've told them they've got my money for my entire life. They're going to be the ones that help me retire.
Yeah, I'm hoping to, I'm building this business, right? Like I think I'm going to be at a really, really nice number by the end of this year. And then I'm giving them 50% of all my retirement, like anything I can put in that. Cause I'm very bullish on everything that those guys are doing.
Oh, so. They're great guys, and they're smart and they work hard. I mean, not a bad thing to say about those guys at all. They live the concept of under promise and over deliver, and boy, do they over deliver. They're just wonderful. Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody. So you heard how to get a hold of the fabulous Pablo Gonzalez. Oh my gosh. I am so glad we did this.
I am too.
And I can't wait to do more fun stuff with you. Like sign me up for a mastermind. Oh my God.
That's in the works, right? I just still struggle with making people pay for that stuff. So like March 14th, I had my first like live event mastermind thing. It was like 6 people at a 5-bedroom house in North Carolina. And I thought it was fantastic, right? Like I feel comfortable charging for something like that. I wouldn't charge for like a monthly call where we all get to hang out, but that's coming too, right? Like I think that's all, and a Facebook group and all, all the things I'm doing for my clients. Once I can scale myself, I'm going to do for myself also and give it away for free. Cause I really do want to have this impact.
You are making an impact. You are. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do. I mean, gosh, you're so young. I can't wait for another 5-10 years to go by and see where you're at. Like, oh my gosh, the people you already know, but like double that. Oh my goodness. Let me just hang out. With you, buddy.
You're in, Jen. Here's the good news. You made it.
I love it.
You got in on floor 1.
I love it. No, truly, you are spectacular. I cannot wait for our Not Your Average Investor show with
it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
We're going to be doing that on September 15th, right?
That's right.
At what is it? Noon Pacific time, 9 a.m.
No, noon 30, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. Yeah,
you're right. 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. Everyone log in for that because that's going to be super fun.
Yeah. Check out the JWB Rental Property Investing Facebook group if you want to understand what we're talking about, right? Like that Facebook group, I think is super valuable.
Oh,
which is
super valuable.
Mother Baby, right?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, everybody, thank you so very much for joining me and Pablo, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Bye.
Bye.